This is the Zach Ansbury Show.
So you mentioned that during your career, you've had all sorts of challenges. Is there any that have sort of stood out? You know, you've had a challenge, whether it's a certain campaign or whether it's a certain analysis that you couldn't complete, or just something to do with yourself. Is there some challenges that you've had, and if so, what were they, and how did you overcome them?
I think the challenges have come from it's part of the growth process of becoming a more complete marketer. I think one of the things that was a big challenge for me when I went to I was at Nabisco Biscuit Company, and then I left that when Kraft purchased Nabisco, and I went to Sara Lee and managed Kiwi Shoe Polish. So I had been on Chips Ahoy, which was the number 2 cookie brand in the U.S. after Oreo, and this was a brand that, our heavy users bought it 26 times a year. It turned. We had displays. Our Nabisco's go-to-market strategy was direct store delivery. So we had trucks going to the stores, and then salespeople went in the stores, got stuff from the back room, and put it on shelves. And then I went to Sara Lee, and I couldn't understand why everything moved so slowly there when we were warehouse delivered. Like, if we wanted to get distribution on a new item, we were literally in 95% of stores in 2 weeks. We were in 99 stores in 4. So because we could do it, because we controlled our shelf space, we controlled, all we had to do was get authorization from the retailer. And because he didn't really have to do anything except accept the product and list it, we could get new items in very easily and get immediate distribution. And it took me a long time to learn that I was now in a category where people didn't buy 26 times a year. They didn't even buy 26 times in their entire life, right? In fact, They might not even buy more than 5 times in their entire life. And, so going from a category that was so fast turning to one that was slow turning, and it seemed to me that the sales force was uninterested because I didn't understand. So like learning how a completely new go-to-market system worked. No one explained it to me, and I don't think they felt like they had to because this is what they were living, right? And I came from a totally different go-to-market system. So when I've made these changes, when you change companies and you have to learn the company and you have to learn what's different about how they go to market, that's where I've always had probably sort of the biggest hiccups, or the biggest, where it felt like the gears were grinding for me. And then that's when I had to really go into learning mode, and so I'd have to stop and say, wait a minute, I'm just not getting this here. And I'd have to start putting those puzzle pieces together. But I think that's probably the more, rather than like a specific, I don't think there's like been a specific major challenge. It's really been more around the transitions and how to make that happen.
And that makes a lot of sense. You're moving from one organization to the next and trying to pick up new systems and, adapt what you already know to what they're doing and vice versa to some extent. From all of that hard work at, managing all of these different brands, all of these different organizations, is there any, and you mentioned that the television ads that you had come up with as well, or that you'd worked on, is there anything that you're, particularly proud of? Is there, I don't know, like a career highlight or something that you point to and you're like, I did that?
Yeah, I think one of the, actually I wish I had a package of this product in the house. I don't, but one of the things I did at Chips Ahoy, which I think was probably the best thing I ever did in my career in terms of integrating market research into the business. We were losing share to our key competitor, Chips Deluxe, which was a Keebler cookie. Keebler was the trademark brand for their cookie and cracker line. And we were losing share over the years, and we couldn't figure out why we were losing share. And so someone had done a market structure analysis of the chocolate chip cookie category. And so it included everything from homemade cookies to all the competitive products. And it's one of these perceptual maps that doesn't really, the axes don't really mean anything. You just have little dots clustered everywhere. And what we found was that, there were these various clusters where we played. And so the idea I had, which was really a simple one, but no one had thought of, was, I looked to see like how much volume was in each of these little clusters and what was the growth rate. And then what was our share in each of them versus competition. So it was an exercise that took probably a half a day, right, to pull the numbers and put them together. And what I found is there was this little segment called special ingredients where we had one item which was worth $3 million, which was like 1% of our sales, and we were going out of distribution on it. We were going to get rid of it. And Keebler had like 7 items in there. And if you looked at it, those were the items that they would have an item in there, and then they would introduce a new one, and then 2 years later they introduced another new one. And they were getting all their growth from this segment, and we weren't competing in it. So we were letting them have this little corner of the chocolate chip cookie universe, and we were doing nothing. We were just like putting our stuff out, and we were completely ignoring it. So we had a little bit of R&D going, and so we had a peanut butter version of a cookie and one that had like little candies like M&Ms. And so I introduced those 2 products into the market. And I mean, literally we got, they were equal to like 20% of our sales in year 1, and we got our share back. And what it showed me was that you really need to, you can't just look at one piece of market research data. You need to integrate all that stuff and then come up with the right idea. So what makes me especially proud is that the chocolate chip cookie with little candies in it, which we called Chips Ahoy Candy Blasts,
nice.
That's still in market. It still has the same name, which I came up with.
Wow, that's super cool.
So I can, yeah, exactly. Because like usually it's like that's not the marketer. Usually you have some committee or the agency. And I'm like, why don't we call this Candy Blast? And
I mean,
like,
the fact that it's still around. I mean, a lot of brands or subvariants of brands tend to get introduced, and they have a lot of advertising. They have additional shelf space. Often they're price promoted, and they're gone.
And this is in market for 18 years.
Wow.
And it's not everywhere. It's not in 100% distribution, but it's still in distribution. And maybe one day it will go out of distribution. But, there's not a lot of marketers in the world who introduced a new product that has survived for 18 years.
Well, that's on my shopping list when I head to the US for sure. I'll make sure
we'll have a pack waiting for your hotel.
That'd be amazing. I'll bring some back as well, and I'll put them in the kitchen for the Institute, and I'll send out an email and let everyone know, special delivery directly from Bob, because, you came up with it. So
don't tell anybody, but I like Arnott Scotch fingers better.